All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's meeting for the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. My name is Cviat Kushirov, and I'm the president of this Rotary Club. And each week, we bring you inspirational and interesting speakers who normally talk to us on the topics related to education, entrepreneurship, innovation, and how those contribute to service to others. So our speaker today is very familiar with Rotary, and him and I have actually been talking for a few months, and I'm really excited about his talk. Our speaker is Judson Moore, and Judson is has been very involved with Rotary throughout his life. He has gone through several youth Rotary programs in his early years, and he credits that experience in big part to helping him develop into the person that he is today and the opportunities that he's been able to enjoy throughout his adult life. So he's going to be sharing some of his story in his talk today, and I will pass it over to Judson. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, and it is an honor and a privilege to be able to speak with you today and to share my story and my reflections on the ways in which Rotary's wonderful youth programs have influenced my life, and also share with you some of the ways in which they've influenced the lives of others as well. Just give me a moment here, and I'll switch over to my presentation. Sharing screen. Okay. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody if you're seeing what I'm seeing my screen? Yes? Okay, very good. Okay, so yes, as you said, my name is Judson. I like to say I'm an author and a travel addict. I've been authoring a travel blog for the better part of 20 years or so, but recently published my first book after several years of soul searching and thinking, was the writing I was doing in travel really the type of value add in this world that I wanted to be leaving behind? Was it really the message I wanted to share? And ultimately, when I thought about what is the message that I have and what is the encouragement that I want to give to others, it really came down to pursuit of happiness. And so the title of the book is Exponential Happiness, and it's really geared towards any person who reads that thing will find it valuable. But of course, as it's part of the core piece of my story, it's about how to identify and pursue goals starting at a young age. So I started my Rotary career very young in Interact, which led me to hearing about RYLA, which is one of the youth camps, right, that Rotary supports. There's a couple different flavors of that around the world. And then it was there that I learned about Youth Exchange, which brought me to Germany the first time, actually, about almost 20 years ago now. Yeah. Oh boy, it's been 20 years. I hadn't thought about that till right now. So 20 years ago, I was sitting in anticipation, wondering if this whole thing was going to kick off or not. And then it did a few months later. And then upon my return in university, got involved with Rotaract, ended up being part of the convention committee for the New Orleans convention in 2011. And then now I'm proud to say that I am a Rotarian myself. And today I'm sporting my my original Rotary pin from District 6190, the district that supported me in my youth exchange year and organized RYLA and everything else. So it's where I grew up in Louisiana, and then also I couldn't resist the temptation to wear my Rotarian Metalheads pin, the loudest fellowship in Rotary. They'll be very proud of me for making sure I plugged them here as well. Okay, so very good. So today's program, we called it The Consequences of Rotary Youth Programs, but spoiler alert, the consequences are pretty good. So do tell your friends and family. Now, when we think about youth and young, this is going to be one of these interactive moments here. Are there any phrases that come to mind, cliches, that people go on and on about telling young people as words of wisdom when they're young? Are there anything come to mind for anybody?
Make mistakes, maybe?
It's a good one, yeah.
Take chances.
Take chances. It's good.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Very good. Why is it that being young is a benefit for those opportunities? Take chances, make mistakes.
You can recover from. That's kind of what I was going to say as well. Yeah, you can be more risky at that point. Yeah.
It's very good. Okay, well, then the next couple slides are going to make a lot of sense. Then that gives me confidence that we're going in the right direction here. Well, one phrase that I heard a lot when I was young was this good old cliche. Oh, sorry, skipped a slide. I'm used to having a second monitor and being able to see what's coming up next. So, all right, there's 2 points we're going to talk about today. The value of being young is the first point we're going to talk about, and then we're going to talk about the value of showing up. There we go. So these are the 2 topics for today. Okay, so starting with the value of being young. So I already asked you the question there. And the cliche that I got all the time when I was young was to do it while you're young. But what I've come to learn over time is that it is indeed a very cliche thing to say, but it's just not a very cliche thing to do. A lot of people talk about, do it while you're young, but what is it? What is young while we're talking about it, right? What do these things really mean? There's a lot of us who maybe get asked when we're young, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then there's any answer comes out, whatever young minds are thinking they want to be when they grow up, and then good, great, and then you move on with the conversation. You never sit back and say, well, how might you actually accomplish this, and what are the goals that you might set for yourself so that you might actually be able to achieve that dream one day. So right, but why does it matter? Why does actually being young matter? What is the benefit? And so this is some of the items that you've already honed in on. I've drawn up into this graph that is kind of my visual thesis for my way of thinking on this. So this is a kind of a cookie cutter idea of what someone's life could look like as far as occupied time and different momentous occasions in one's life. And you can see here, you're starting off, you're young, from you go through school, you might be young without a lot of responsibilities, but you don't have a lot of flexibility in your life. Other people are writing the rules for you. You're being told you have to go to school, you have to do homework, you have to maybe do this after school sport activity. You have to do what your brothers and sisters want to do because that's what's easiest to work out logistically. So there's all these pressures to kind of fall in line with the expectations of your school age. You get to college, then you get a little bit of autonomy, opportunity to pick what you're going to study, maybe try some different things, but still, you're feeling the pressure. Okay, I need to be in school those, and this is occupying lots of time. So what do? You get out of university, and then this is really a time when you have opportunity to experiment, try different industries, try different jobs, roles, move around, try different locations, whatever that may be. And then over time, though, you start to land yourself into something that's like, okay, this feels good. This is where I want to be. You get more locked into a career. Maybe you get married. Maybe you pick up debts, mortgage, have some kids, stuff like this, right? So, and then when those responsibilities start to go away after 20 years of raising children, you can enjoy retirement. And if your health is held on good enough and you're in a good position to do so, maybe then you have flexibility as well. But you never know what's going to happen throughout life that can make that time difficult as well. So I think that this is this is clearly a very kind of Disney cookie cutter idea of what one's life might look like. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's circumstances are different. But the point here being that for many of us, we will find that when we are younger, we have more flexibility because we have fewer types of responsibilities that would force us into choosing against our own interests because we need to naturally take somebody else's interests into consideration as we go. So this statement, if anybody knows who said this, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Does anybody know who said this? Okay, very good. It was Albert Einstein said this. So compounding interest, this is just to show you visually how this looks. This here is a compounding curve. And you can see not a lot of change for a period of time, but towards the end, it just skyrockets, right? And what you really need for an investment, whether it's a financial investment or an investment of effort of any kind, to have this accelerated growth curve over time is, well, yeah, it's time. And just imagine to yourself what you think just putting 10% less input to this effort might look like. A lot of people point like, okay, it's not quite as steep as this, but it still ends up, pretty far up the graph. But this is actually what just 10% less effort or less contribution looks like in the end. So it's food for thought to think about, are you giving your entire effort? Are you giving everything that you possibly can in all of your pursuits in life, whether they be in financial, in this visual reference, or in the type of effort you're putting in towards pursuing your goals, or not. And for those who are putting in 100%, they get something like the blue line. And for those who are putting in less, they get something more like the green line. Great. So that was the first point, the value of youth we've talked about. So now I want to move on to the second point, talking about the value of showing up. In order to demonstrate this, I thought it might be nice to share a philosophy that I have here and then a few personal examples. So something I've observed over time is that opportunities don't go to the most qualified people. They go to the people who show up. And I have many times where I have felt this. So I wanted to share with you 5 ways showing up changed the world, or at least my world. So I'm going to do this in reverse chronological order with some things that are more recent, and then work my way back. Out of respect of time, I'll try not to get too lost in the stories, but if anything catches your attention, I'll be happy to reference back to them during the Q&A. All right. So sometimes showing up takes the form of writing an application. You can think of this when you go to university, you have to apply, or for a job, you have to apply. This photo here was applying on a long shot fellowship program that engages young professionals in dialogue between Egypt and the United States. And I'm actually standing here on the front of the presidential yacht of Egypt on the Suez Canal, shaking hands there with the captain of the ship. And this is one of the most militarized places on the planet, and a place that you just simply cannot go unless you have very good reason to be there. There's no resorts on the Suez Canal or anything like this. And there I was being able to take part in a cocktail reception on this yacht. And this happened due to deciding to show up by applying to a fellowship program called the Art of Dialogue, East-West Art of Dialogue Foundation, fellowship that's sponsored by the Shafi Gaber Foundation in Egypt, and ended up spending a month traveling 2 weeks with a group of other fellows in Egypt and 2 weeks around the United States, shaking hands with lots of dignitaries and political leaders and political, military, economic, educator, religious leaders. We also met the Coptic Pope on this trip. It was lots of wild stories from here. But it was the type of thing where if you look at the surface and say, oh, I've never been to Egypt. I don't have any idea about Egypt or these types of foreign relations. They certainly would never pick me. But then I looked at the details, and it turned out that who they were looking for were not only people who didn't have an expertise about Egypt or the United States on the behalf of the Egyptians, but specifically for people who had never visited the other country. So they were looking for fresh blood, people to bring in. And so I applied, and next to a bunch of Wall Street bankers and Washington, D.C. lawyers, I somehow got picked, even though I was wearing jeans to the interview. But it was a Sunday after all. So, but this was one moment, and this was 2015. And last year, actually, I don't know how many of you attended the Rotary Convention in Hamburg, but one of the presenters was a parliamentarian from Egypt. And after she stepped off the stage, I found her in the wings and said, I think we have a mutual friend, Shafiq Gaber. And she said, oh my gosh. And she put her security personnel on the other side of me and made a bubble for us. And we got deep into a dialogue, and we're just instantly connected because we had this mutual friend in common. So this was a very cool thing, but it happened in such a random way. So you just never know. But applying yourself has big benefits. So next one is by invitation. Oftentimes people may invite us to show up. I mean, think about the dinner invitation, or do you want to go out this weekend? Or would you like to come meet somebody? I have somebody who I think might be interesting for you to know. The photo here is representative of my Peace Corps volunteer experience. I was in Kyrgyzstan for 2 years, and you get into the Peace Corps by invitation. Okay, there is an application involved, but I was invited to apply actually by somebody who I knew from the South Bay Rotaract Club in Los Angeles, who was also going into the Peace Corps, and he invited me to apply for that. And in the end, I was extended an invitation to the Peace Corps, and I accepted it. And then turned out that they were sending me to Kyrgyzstan, which I didn't know until months later. And this was another experience that really changed my life. There for a little over 2 years, and ended up actually authoring a project that has thrived until today, onboarding journalists living in rural areas onto the internet. And now, as a result of that effort, there is an entire nationally recognized foundation of community media that has gone on to be developed, and has made a huge impact in the way that journalists are able to do their work in Central Asia. But it started with an invitation. Now, this one I think is quite an interesting one. Some of you may recognize the photos that are here, or who they are, but this is the White Stripes rock band. And these photos I took at a concert on a very cheap, very not professional point and click digital camera in 2007. So we're talking, not very nice digital photos. And I just took a bunch of pictures and put them on the internet on Flickr. I forgot, I didn't even know I had a Flickr account years later when something happened by random chance, which was that the White Stripes, this ended up being their final concert. And nobody knew that at the time, but it was, and they recorded it. And so they actually issued a 2-disc vinyl set to their fan club. And when they were looking for photos from the concert, they found mine on Flickr and reached out to me and asked if they could use my photos for the inside of this LP that they did a limited release of. And I actually, by random chance, can now say that I'm the album photographer for the White Stripes, and my name is actually listed on the back of this album. So you never know, but it all kind of started with showing up and doing something, but some things you just can't force. Random chance is definitely at play out there in the universe. And volunteering. So coming a little bit more to the heart of Rotary, we volunteer. Volunteering is part of our lifeblood. It's what we do, it's what we proselytize, and it's what we seek fellowship in doing all around the world. I was a student at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge when Hurricane Katrina came through New Orleans in 2005 and decimated the southeast coast of the United States. Fortunately, I'm not from New Orleans. I don't have family in New Orleans, so we were not directly impacted, but everybody in the Southeast has, from that time, has a Katrina story and has some sort of impact. As a student, actually classes got canceled for a week. Some people maybe chose to sit around and just wait for classes to resume or extend the hurricane parties, which I'll admit, I was at a hurricane party when the levees broke, but then I showed up real quick to the local Red Cross chapter and asked, how can I volunteer? And actually, the student standing here with me is also a former Rotary Youth Exchange student. She was in Italy for a year. And then we were at university together and Rotaract together, and went at 2 o'clock in the morning to the local Red Cross chapter in Baton Rouge to ask if there's anything we might be able to do. And she and I were assigned a assigned an entire shelter of 300 souls to be the managers of for 3 days without any experience, training, credentials, or anything. We're just college kids. We're like 22, 23 years old. But that's how desperate the Red Cross and all emergency responders were at that time, that we were able to be of value and to serve in that way. Now, this is the one black hole of my professional memory. I don't know how this happened. I have no memory of where the transition occurred, but I actually started as a volunteer and ended up working full-time for 2 years at the Red Cross as their emergency response planner, and literally rewrote the book on how to respond to emergency situations for the Red Cross in Southeast Louisiana. Again, as a student. And then when I graduated, I moved on to other things, but it all started as a volunteer. And then the origin story. So, and this is coming back to the point of the consequences of Rotary. So I was a camper at RYLA, and there was a presenter who came and spoke about the Youth Exchange program. And I won't repeat here what all the Youth Exchange program is. I hope you all know, and all the benefits thereof. But the call to action at the end of her talk was to, if you're interested in this program, just come say hello. And I thought to myself, well, certainly I've got to like put my elbows out and jump over people and make myself known and stand out from the crowd, because there's no way out of these 50 students I'm going to have a chance at this, but I'm going to try. And it turned out I was the only one who expressed interest. I was the only one who went there and said, I'd be interested to do this. And because I raised my hand that day, a year later, I was in Germany and had the Youth Exchange program experience that has changed my life ever since. And for many, many, many years, I've been asked by some of my peers from that time, how is it that I've gotten to do all the things that I've done? And it really I really struggled with this for a long time, because I always says like, oh, I just bought a plane ticket and went to the airport and I went, or whatever. But of course, that's not truthful. And it's not the full answer. There was a lot of background story there. But what I've come to believe is that there's something about in your youth being encouraged, that permission to feel that you can say yes, to feel that you can raise your hand, to have the audacity to believe that it can be you, and being young isn't holding you back, but rather it's a benefit. Giving that type of encouragement to youth is very, very important, and it's the type of thing that leads to success as we proselytize the programs of Rotary for youth. But to that, I wanted to just, in closing, share with you a couple of interesting pieces of data that I gathered this week. There's a Facebook group for Youth Exchange students. There's just shy of 30,000 people in it, and I ran a poll in the group, and I said, when you decided to do an exchange, how influential were others in helping you decide to do it? And I gave 3 options. I said, they're very influential, they're not at all influential, or kind of neutral, so-so. Well, here are the results that came back in. And this is the other interactive part. I wanted to ask, which one of these bars do you think? Do you think that the majority of students said that others were very influential, neutral, or not at all influential?
I kind of hope that the 384 would be very, but I'm pretty sure that's not the answer.
Anybody else?
That's what I would go for.
That would be my choice.
Yeah. Well, of course, you all got it right. The middle one was neutral, but it goes just the other way. The vast majority of students who have participated in the Youth Exchange program have said, they claim that no one was influential in this decision, which begs the question, if most Rotary Youth Exchange students claim that others were not at all influential in the decision for them to make an exchange year, what does that mean for us? All right. How do we go out and encourage people to be parts of this program if the influence is somehow not being felt? Well, of course, we could take the easy way out and say, well, let's just focus on the excited students, the ones that pop to the surface. And then, of course, we can also work harder to evangelize the benefits of our program earlier. So it's not about finding that student 1 year before, but finding the student several years before and getting the idea in their mind very, very early, very young, that, hey, in a few years, there's this opportunity out there. Maybe you can do, maybe you can, we can socialize it to your parents, get them accustomed to the idea. Because of course, the closer you get to that departure date, the more of a shock it'll be for everybody to think that that's something you might be capable of, right? So I won't read off all of these comments, but just to prove that this was real data, there were a number of comments that people left as well on this poll. And there were some really incredible things. Here's one student who is from Argentina, and she had the opportunity to go to Disney, but actually she felt uneasy about Disney, and she wanted to do something that was a bigger impact. And this is how her family helped her discover Youth Exchange, because it was something bigger to do. Beyond that, she already done some research about where she thought she might like to go in the world, and had settled on Denmark. And everybody said, oh, Denmark, you'd learn Danish. What's the point in that? There's no reason. Go to America or France or whatever. But a Rotarian convinced her to think, like, this is an experience where you really can choose your own way. Don't do the typical thing. So she did go to Denmark in the end, and now she's working at a Scandinavian embassy. So, you have some people who at a very young age are very driven, even against, some pushback from family and friends, are very driven and know what they want. So, these are the excited students that will come find you, and, they'll get out there. They just need to know that the opportunity exists, be invited, and they will show up and they'll do a great job. Some are learning from teachers at a young age. Others are, maybe they're getting a little bit of encouragement, but they actually needed to meet an exchange student. This one was actually part of a host family. So they hosted a student first, became best friends with that exchange student, and then realized, wow, if I could be so close with this person from another place, maybe I should be that person to go to another place as well. Sometimes you have an older sibling who does it, and then it's like, oh, well, they did it, I should do it too. And again, other family members. And their comments just go on and on and on. But my very favorite one is absolutely this, who said they saw the pins on the jacket and then they had to go. And if there's one thing the Youth Exchange program really does exceptionally well, it's the marketing with those jackets. It's been 20 years since I left, and I've done a lot of things that I'm proud of in my life, but there is no single physical possession that I prize more than my Rotary Youth Exchange jacket. It is a piece of art, and to everyone who has had the opportunity to create one of those, it is something irreplaceable. So let's review the call to action here. Yes, of course, focus on the excited students. We want to bring them into the fold, the people who want to be part of the youth programs, whether it's Youth Exchange or RYLA or Rotaract or Interact or the Peace Fellows program or anything else. Of course, we want them to be part of our world and bring them in. But we also need to do our part to evangelize the benefits of our programs. We need to start as early as possible. We need to try to get into the classrooms, into the clubs, into the social media or wherever it may be at the youngest ages possible. Get to the parents of those young kids. Get everybody thinking about the possibilities that Rotary can bring to them, to people of all ages as they will move through life, but especially when starting at a young age. Great benefits can be realized and will be realized in the end. And with that, I believe I say thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Judson. This was great. Do you mind just unsharing your screen? And if you just stop sharing there. There you go. And I'll just switch here to the gallery view so we can see everyone else on the call. We have a full house today for this recording. I'll just go through and quickly introduce everybody. Just wave as I mention your name. So we have Carl from California. We have Nick from Canada. We have Raquel, who's in Mexico. We have Vandana from India. We have Shags, also from California. And we have Rory from Texas. So all over the place, pretty much a good representation of our club over here. So we're running a little bit short on time, so we'll do 2 questions for Judson. So I'll give the opportunity to someone else who's joined the call to ask a question if you'd like. So please just unmute yourself. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my question, especially thinking about the call to action, I have a lot of questions, but we can save that for another day. We, as an e-club, face challenges that are different than a land club. I would love your insights about how you might see an e-club helping influence the youth programs, because obviously it seems like such a critical piece to both just improving people's lives, but also growing Rotary, and I see that in our club because we have so many Rotaract members that have become Rotarians in our club. How do you see e-clubs influencing the youth programs best?
Absolutely. No, it's a great question, and certainly a different challenge than the maybe the traditional challenge that other clubs might face. But I think there's two angles here. One is from what I've understood is that there are some local youth programs that are supported, at least there in Silicon Valley, and so that's a good start. But that doesn't engage everybody, right? And you want to get the broader membership engaged. Now, I can't start to suggest based on what all talents and disciplines exist in the membership could be the possibilities. This is something really that Rotary does well, is recognizing the local need and the local capacity, right? Like, how do we match these things together? And this would, I would assume in the case here, I mean, what does each person think they could do in their local area? Does that mean try to engage in a local school? Maybe you're already doing something, or if you meet young people through colleagues or family or through other community involvements, that's a moment where you can say, oh, here I am with this young person. I wonder if they might benefit from some information about these programs, right? So I think there's some ways to do that, but of course, all of this is possible thanks to the age of the internet, right? And so, all the kids we're trying to reach are on social media, and I don't have all the answers here for sure, but all the information is online. Rotary has wonderful information on their website, and how do we be part of the groups that we're already in the digital sphere, help share that type of thing to get things out to people? And it might be through the parents or through the teacher or whoever else. Maybe we don't get direct access to that student at that age, but there are ways that we can share that information, make sure that people know like applications are open, learn more, like that type of thing, encourage like, hey, if you don't get it this year, apply next year, stuff like that.
I was youth exchange chair in our club for, 13 years in Ohio. And we worked very closely with the guidance department at the schools, with the guidance officer.
Yeah.
And what they did is put up posters, and we also went in with our current students, even a few from the area. We were fortunate, we had 3 high schools, and sometimes we even had 3 students, 1 at each high school, and that was a lot to manage. And so that is a great way, going in and getting the students interested through an assembly. That's
great. That's a great idea. Yeah, a little bit of paper on the wall go a long way, and we're a recognized organization. So, it's not walking randomly into a school saying, I want to advertise at your children, right? Mm-hmm. It's going in as an established organization saying, hey, I have an opportunity for your students and I'd like to share it with them. Is there a way by which I could do that? I can leave some paper, I can make a talk, I can do whatever, but what, again, to the counselors, that's a great idea. How might they ask you to engage with them?
Now that's the outbound side. On the inbound side, the biggest challenge was getting host families.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing.
So thanks guys for the questions. We won't have time for any more on the recording, but those of you that have joined the recording, please stay on after we stop the recording, and then we can continue the discussion with Judson. But just to wrap things up, everyone that just watched the video on our website, please remember to fill out the attendance survey below, and also don't forget to engage in our discussion section at the very bottom. So make sure that you tell us what you thought about this presentation today. Ask Judson a question. We will send him the link and make sure that he is able to come back once or twice during that week onto our website and respond to some of these questions. But thank you for joining us again this week. And with that, I'll turn it back to Judson for some final thoughts.
Very good. Thank you. I really appreciate the question about, as an e-club, how are things different? Well, I'm not in an e-club, so I can't pretend to have the best answer to this, right? But clearly, you have a formula here that works for you, and it works in the communities where you are. You're already bringing people together from all over the world for a common cause. So where you are having the opportunities to think about where we can support those youth programs, of which there are many, I think it creates a huge opportunity, especially in knowing the priorities that Rotary International has around bringing more youth into the Rotary family, and all the ways in which youth are using technology. And as a technology-founded club, there might be more ways to pioneer bringing youth into the fold. So I definitely encourage you to do that, and I'm sure that you'll come up with some brilliant solutions. The very last thing I wanted to say, I'm just going to share my screen one very last moment, is I did mention that I've recently written a book, and I wanted to offer a free digital copy of the book to every member of the club. Often when I speak at Rotary clubs in particular, I try to bring paper copies along for the club to have or to give to the students with which they work. But given, again, we're not physically together, so I needed to come up with an alternative solution. And I put together a little landing page on my website for you. You can visit this link until the end of the month, and you'll be able to download the digital edition of the book for free. So please make sure that everybody in the club is able to get this, and I'd be happy if you share it as well with any of the youth that you sponsor, and it'd be perfectly fine for me that they get a copy of it as well. And
well, thanks so much, Judson. One question on that: would you be able to extend the deadline? I think this might be a featured program sometime in February. I'll have to check the schedule.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah. I figured it was 2 weeks from today. It was it'd already be old news. So if I need to extend it, I'm happy to do that.
I'll let you know on the exact dates. But thank you so much once again, and thanks everybody for joining this week.